Welcome to ReReview, where we watch movies from our past with a perspective from today. Your hosts are Matt, Bobby, and Austin, and we love the films from our youth, so we're taking a look back to see if they still hold up. This is it, the final episode of our special October movie month, where each of us selected one Halloween-related film to re-review. If you missed it, go back and listen to the previous episodes where we covered Casper, The Ring, Jeepers Creepers, and 28 Days Later. Is there nothing more perfect than watching Halloween for Halloween? Halloween was released in 1978, directed by John Carpenter. It stars Donald Pleasence, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Tony Moran. This movie tells us it's really about an origin story in pure evil. Now, this is fair warning. We're spoiling a 44-year-old movie, so if you haven't seen it, we will be revealing key plot points. And talk about origins, right? When you think of your big scary monsters in the closet, or as this movie calls it, the boogeyman, could you think of anyone more frightening than seeing this origin story and how all of this starts out? I mean, we are literally put into the eyeballs of a kid who is committing murder. How dramatic could they be to start this film?
That was still, I think, one of the best openings for any horror movie, if you ask me. I don't think, I guess that's a good question. Like, when you watched it the first time, if you can remember the very first time watching it, did it ever connect with you that it was potentially a kid?
No, I didn't think that.
Like, it's obvious now after you've seen it, you kind of see, okay, it's a tiny hand, and like you get the implications that it is. But I remember the first time I was watching it being blown away the fact that it was a child.
Yeah.
It was such a reveal.
I mean, I guess if you're thinking about some of the perspective that they're giving you there, I can kind of see why you could think it's an adult, right? Because one of the things I liked in the fact that it was in like first person, I was thinking of Doom, because I always come back to Doom for some reason when I think first person. It hurts a little bit. But pulling the knife from the drawer looked so good as it kind of came up on the side of the screen. And it's like, oh, there's about to be bad stuff going down here. But I think maybe from that height, you could perceive that it was an adult, right?
Mm-hmm. It was an easy sell, to be honest. And then, like, they didn't necessarily set up anything that would imply, because was Judith, I think was the sister's name. She doesn't imply the age of Michael when she mentions Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't necessarily make the connection right away that Michael is the person that it potentially could be. I do remember watching this, that one, it was a standout moment from a tech point of view, because it was like one of the first times they ever used Steadicam.
Yeah.
And so you got that. It was a continuous one shot. It wasn't really a one shot. They hid some cuts, but
I think there was one hidden cut.
Yeah.
I think it was split into two, and it must be where where the mask covered the lens, I'm thinking.
You nailed it. That's exactly where it is.
Well, and it's, it's funny because now, you see things like the Conjuring movies where they almost always start with like the one shot, right? That establishes the world. You never really saw that before this. You don't really see it that often because it is so difficult to pull off, but it's, yes, any modern viewer immediately goes to Doom whenever they see that.
Right.
But I do think that it sets up pretty well the world. My only problem with that whole sequence was the awkward standing around when they clearly put the Steadicam on like a boom or one of those little like crane things so they could do the pull away shot. Like how awkwardly the parents are just, this kid's got a bloody knife in his hands. And they're just standing like, gee golly, there goes Michael again.
Well, the dad kind of takes a step back, but yes, there's an element of, why aren't you more concerned about what's happening right now?
You would think someone would have ran in the house like, Judith,
Maybe they're just shocked.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, they wouldn't even know that Judith was dead, right?
Not yet, but
they're like, oh, here's my son, and it's Halloween, and he's got a bloody knife. Why do you have that knife, little boy? So how much does John and Deborah Hill is the screenplay writer here? How much do they hate kids? Like, why start this off with a child that is just the epitome of darkness?
It's just continuing on with the other movies that we've watched. They all have to have creepy kids. It's just like a requirement.
I don't support that.
I don't either.
So tired of the creepy kids. I guess the other thing I could bring up, before we even get to all this point is the music done by John Carpenter. Is there a more iconic theme? I'm sure there is. Okay, you're going to say Star Wars. Leave me out of this. But thinking of like for horror films and this particular sound and that piano, and of course they run it back 1,000 times throughout the film, but it still sounds great.
Yeah, it's really good. And there's been like a lot of filmmaking case studies about how like music changes the tone of a movie, because there's been instances where if you watch this movie in particular mute and then watch it with the music, it adds so much to it.
Mm-hmm. Watching this mute would probably drag a lot. Be like, what's happening? There's just people hanging out for a while.
It doesn't. You're right. I think that it doesn't have a lot of forward progression in a lot of ways. Especially when you think about the fact that a lot of so you have the opening sequence, which I think has a decent amount of energy to it. You have the sanitarium breakout sequence, which would fit right in with a modern first person scary game. The driving of the car at night, and all of a sudden you start seeing the people walking outside in the rain.
Right.
But then it does kind of hit this big wall, because there's a gap between that and a good 40 minutes before the first teen murder.
Yeah. It was a long way into the movie before anything happened again. That wasn't just like tension building.
Well, that was the key, right? It was all that tension building. I mean, I could get back to the sound, and one of the things that I definitely made a note on here was the beyond the theme itself, there was a strong focus on these really high-pitched dissonant chords to just make you feel off kilter, even though like we're saying the scene wasn't that. But it was all about just piercing your ear, and I was like, I'm uncomfortable right now.
There was one high-pitched squeal that I felt like it lasted like a minute long, and I was just like, just stop with that. I'm so uncomfortable. Like this is just making me like I don't like
thinking
this.
Of the same one. Yeah, if we move on here and we get to the idea of him escaping this, it's an asylum. Would you say sanitarium?
Sanitarium asylum. It's like a hospital for like that still to my, is the part that kind of throws me off, is the whole fact that I don't know how old he's supposed to be. I assume 10 to 12, probably like young, but not so young. And
well, didn't he say he was 6 or whatever? He said in the movie he was 6, I think.
And I think I'm cheating here because it says the actor played Michael at age 23.
You mean adult?
Yeah.
But
I'm pretty sure he said he was 6. Like he said something about him being 6 when he first met him, and then trying to get to him, and then just giving up and spending the rest of the time trying to keep him incarcerated.
That is a good thing to bring up, because he does mention he's 6, and he does mention how long he tried to get to him, and then how long he tried to keep him incarcerated. So like, how old was Michael Myers in this? So
23.
Obviously he was the character.
At least that's what they're listing. Yeah, they're saying the character was 23.
23.
Well, wasn't it? It was 1963 to 78, right? That's how it.
So he'd be.
Bobby's doing some math. Everyone's doing some.
That can't. Oh, but he was already 6. So yeah, I guess that kind of.
Well, checks. I mean, we get into the scene. We get to meet Loomis, or ideas of what's going on here with this, and we see these people walking around in the rain, and all I could think of was zombie movies at that point. Didn't help that we probably just watched 28 Days Later, but the whole entire time I was like, well, this seems off. And then we have this person who at this point, I guess you don't know that it's Michael, jumping on the car and creating chaos.
The sound effect.
Yeah. And my first question is, who taught him how to drive? And I know they addressed this in the movie.
They brought it up. So yes, they did. My bigger question, even more than that, like that was one of the funnier lines in the movie. I think when someone was like, who taught him how to drive? He's like, he was doing a great job last night, or whatever. I think the bigger question is like how he actually figured out how to get to Haddonfield.
Yes. So that was my next note. How did he understand highway infrastructure?
Yeah.
There was a deleted scene where he stopped for directions, right?
Like, this is before Google Maps. So like, and he was a kid when they brought him in. So there's no way he could have potentially like that always bugged me. Is like how he figured out, because I'm pretty sure it was pretty far away wherever it was. It wasn't like it was on the outskirts of town, which probably would have made more sense. But I know they did cut a lot of stuff out, because I feel like him after the breakout getting to the truck, I feel like that probably was a whole scene. that they probably just trimmed.
Yeah, that was interesting how it's just kind of, we just really saw the aftermath of whatever happened there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get into, this is where we see this happen. And then we move into just really, okay, let's get to know Jamie Lee Curtis and her friends.
Right.
Yeah. Watching it
Yep,
now.
go on. You're reading my mind.
No,
yep.
well, okay. So there was two things that came to mind, right? Which was, one of the actresses like came off as so Californian.
Annie or Linda?
She was like Totally or whatever. And they even made fun of it during the movie. And I was like, they're in Illinois in the 70s. And the other thing that I remember thinking was like, they all still like their ages probably weren't that far off, but they all seemed like way older than they actually were. Like
completely,
that's I get it. That's not an unusual thing in horror movies or most movies where, they cast a 26-year-old, 27-year-old. But I feel like one of them, if I remember correctly, was almost 30 when she got cast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like there is a pretty big age gap or whatever. And then like, I did get the sense that they came off generally as friends, but then like it didn't, I don't know, they were trying to exposition the crap out of their friendship during their walk. But
which the whole time I kept thinking, why don't they have backpacks? Were they not around?
I guess not.
These heavy books in their hand, walking everywhere.
You had to know. If you just saw backpacks, it could be anything, but you had to see the books to know.
But ultimately, during all this, we're getting that suspense building, right? Because guess who's creeping around every corner?
Yeah, it is. But I'm still. I know they tried to explain it in the sequels, but I never really understood why they were chosen to be hunted down. Like
I thought it was because like the house, right? Like she went to the house and then did he have like some kind of connection with the house?
I think that was my assumption as well.
But the whole, maybe my sequencing is out of order or whatever, but I could swear that they saw the car before she went to the house. Because they were all walking together. The car drives by really fast and the one friend's like, speed kills. And then he slams on the brake.
Right, yeah.
No, but before that was the scene with her going to the house with the boy. I could have sworn
it was after. I thought she did
like she dropped the key off at the house like pretty early on, I think.
Yeah, because that's when I think we get the idea that he was already watching at that point.
And then said,
because
we're going to sell this house because it's a creepy haunted house.
Well, they try to retcon it in the second movie or third movie where they say like they were actually siblings or something like that. And that was the reason why, like he was just trying to kill all of his sisters apparently.
Wait, what?
Yeah. That's weird. I can't remember if it was in 2 or 3 or not 3 because 3 wasn't unrelated, but 4 where they tried to imply that they were like half siblings or step siblings or something. And that was the reason. I think because somebody probably asked the question is like, why go through all this effort to kill these, 2 or 3 girls for apparently no real reason, plus their boyfriends or whatever.
Well, oddly, the answer seemed easy to me because he's pure evil.
This is true.
No? Too simple? That's what I leaned into. I kind of had to because it was just like, okay, I guess he's a voidless walking murdering creature and he kind of likes to stalk his prey.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they tried to, and this is something that they've kind of made commentary about in either later movies or in movies like Cabin in the Woods, where like a lot of these are supposed to be quote unquote morality tales.
Yeah.
But then that really wouldn't make any sense for Lori because she was the virginal, too nice,
But she's the one who lived.
Yeah, but he still tried to kill her. It's not like it is not like he was like, phoning in his stabs or anything like that. He legit was trying to kill her at a lot of times, but I guess if he really wanted to, he could have popped out behind her in a car or something and taken her out pretty easily like the friends.
How convincing did you feel that Donald Pleasence as Loomis was as a psychologist, psychiatrist? I found him to be very demanding at points where I was very confused why he seemed in charge of the police.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too.
I think that part of it, at least from what I've seen from the behind the scenes, from what I remember, as an actor, I don't know if he saw this movie as beneath him. And so I think that he was probably throwing his weight around a little bit more than you probably, because I think Carpenter was a fairly new, if not a brand new director at this point. And Sutherland had experience under his belt. He had been an actor for a long time, stage plays, all that kind of stuff. So like I feel like it wasn't even just the police force. He's probably throwing his weight around in front of the director. It was probably like, it almost felt like, George Lucas was directing him, telling him like more, stronger, faster or whatever. And like, he was just
Faster,
trying
more intense.
it's just like at 11 at his intensity sometimes. Like, it was just like, maybe you should have been in the sanitarium, man.
Yeah, I think I definitely have to agree there. The another element I thought was interesting, since what is it? Annie's dad is the sheriff.
Sheriff, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you're cruising in your car and you're smoking weed, you think your dad wouldn't notice when you roll down the window? Like, I wanted to know, like, why are you stopping just because you see your dad at the store? Why don't you just drive on by?
Right, and wave or whatever if he sees you.
I mean, that's one of those suspension of disbelief, right? Like, I mean, that whole sequence, I guess you could say like he was distracted because it was kind of a weird incident that occurred, but luckily for all of us, he happened to find the Captain Kirk mask in the general store, right?
Right. It's
it was like a rope and a knife. Yeah.
Yeah. Did the rope get used at all?
I guess to hang them up later when he was doing the creative placement of the bodies.
Yeah. All right.
Because wait, what did he use to choke the one? Was that
the phone cable?
Was it the phone cable?
Yeah.
In the car?
Oh no, in the car.
It was just his hands, right?
Was it just the hands? I was so distracted by her hitting the glass cross-eyed that.
Okay, so thank you. That's definitely one of my notes as well. That death hurt. I was watching it going like, wait, why is this like the worst death I've seen on screen?
Well, and she was clearly, quote unquote, still alive when she hit the windshield. Like, he let go and she's like, ugh. It's like, yeah. Who taught her how to die on screen?
It was like, this is not how choking works. Like, wait a second. Thinking about the car seats again, because this is one thing I did want to know. Is this the movie that got everyone to check to see if someone's following you? Because I've never seen drivers be so oblivious to the cars that are behind them.
Right.
I don't know. It just reminded me of Jeepers Creepers too, where like there's the car behind them. I think, I don't know about you guys, but like I'm cognizant of all the cars when I'm driving. I only get worried whenever I turn left, the car behind me turns left, then I turn right, and the car behind me turns right, and I'd be like, yo, I'm going to turn left 3 times just to see what's going to... I'm pulling into that Quickie Mart.
And that's really what I'm asking. Is this all a built-in healthy paranoia we have, or did this movie just put this into the ethos and everyone is just, this is what we have to do now?
It's possible. It could have did the same thing that Jaws did to swimming, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Maybe not to the same level. Not to the same level for sure, because I'm still, anytime I get to the water, like, I know you're in there, shark.
They're definitely in there. See, I agree with that as well. It's just one of those where it's like, oh, it must be so nice to just drive and not worry about the serial killer in the mask that's following behind you. So oblivious. It kind of killed me. But this does eventually lead up to, it seemed like it was perpetual day. I was very surprised by, the kids who were trick-or-treating. This seemed like 1 p.m.
Yeah.
Our family's home then? What's happening?
I guess in Haddonfield, Illinois in 1978, I guess that was
It gets too cold at night in the Midwest to go trick-or-treating in October, I guess.
To be fair, where I came from, I was from the South or whatever, and like there was so many restrictions on Halloween trick-or-treating. Like, you couldn't do it on Sundays. It got to the point where, they did have curfews. You couldn't do it past a certain time. So I don't know. Maybe Haddonfield was just one of those places where they're like, no, you can't trick or treat super late.
That is super sad.
But and they didn't have any decorations.
They had a pumpkin or two
in the bedroom.
Okay, let's talk about in the bedroom.
Wow. What a segue.
No, I don't think I want to talk about this.
Oh, come on. I mean, all right. So Michael's doing his thing. He's creeping everyone out. He's getting called the boogeyman by the kids who get to see him from across the way. We get that very distinct him walking Annie's body. No, was it Annie's body into the house? Yeah, after killing her in the car. And then the friends show up. We get Linda and her boyfriend, and they're assuming that, Annie's going to be coming home soon with her mans. And Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie's trying to figure out what am I going to do with these kids. I'm trying to have a night for myself, and so Michael's in the house, and they decide to get it on. Is this what really starts that trope? Not to have sex because you're going to get killed.
I wonder what came before this. Like, were there like stalker? I know there's like Psycho, and that they reference Psycho in this movie, but like, what kind of stalker, kind of like butcher type horror movies came before this?
Things we don't have the answer to, Bobby.
I mean, is this new ground?
Well, what I was thinking about was, and especially after you asked that question, Austin, was like, I feel like the two movies that I associate that quote unquote trope with, I think the most are this movie to some extent, because realistically, there was only really that one, quote unquote sexual encounter in it. Well, I guess there's the opening sequence too, or whatever, but and I guess that was probably one of the things that a lot of people kind of tied to, because I know when it first came out, that was one of the things that people really kind of clued into, was the fact that it was a morality tale, that it was a cautionary tale about premature premarital sex or whatever. I also thought about Friday the 13th with Kevin Bacon, and that was the one I think that I tend to think the most about with the whole idea, because like that one was kind of like a plot point in a way, because Jason had died as a result of them basically, getting distracted and hanky panky and all that or whatever. And that was kind of like the reason why the, spoiler alert, mom was going around killing all the camp counselors or whatever.
Spoiler.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't seen it at this point, like
such a spoiler.
Okay, the thing everyone needs to like talk about or whatever. Spoiler alert: it wasn't Jason who was the killer; it was the mom the entire time. But yeah, I think that it kind of ties into. I think that there was probably a span between this movie might have been one of the first ones, and then probably to like the mid to end 80s when you kind of saw the fade off of the slasher movies. I think that was kind of like a reoccurring thing that they tended to use. But I think that's just you like to see teenagers. Like if this was kids, I think there'd be a lot of people who'd, like Bobby probably wouldn't be like, nah, I can't watch that.
No, yeah.
And if it's adults, you're not nearly as interested. So like the high schoolers to early college students are like the only ones anyone would ever watch for a movie like this. And what are those kids doing? They're screwing. So I think it just happens to be the thing that's happening at the same time. And I think John Carpenter even said the same thing. It's just like, that's just what they do. I wasn't trying to say anything. It's just, that's what high school kids do. I'm sorry.
That's probably why he made it such a short scene. Kind of felt bad for the guy. I was like, damn, dude. It didn't really go very long, but he did have the iconic line. He said, I'll be right back.
Can't
Which,
say
of
that.
course, we know what happens from there and there on. I do want to ask, the kids watching The Thing.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
It was the original Thing, right? It wasn't.
Yes,
it wasn't John
Carpenter.
Yeah, it wasn't John Carpenter's remake, because I don't think he had made it yet. Because it came out in the early
it's
80s.
after, which is interesting. I mean, he must have at least had it like in his mind that he was trying to do it at that point.
How epic would it be if all John Carpenter movies have a scene of the movie he's going to do next in the movie? That would be the most clever thing ever.
That's awesome.
That would be some really, really, really good planning. I mean, my whole time watching it, I kind of felt it feels technically cheesy just because of its age, but I was still enjoying all the beats of what was happening.
Mm-hmm. I kind of thought maybe it was a little bit cheesy for its age, but it didn't like hit me over the head with the technology like some of the movies do, where I'm like, wow, look at that TV, or whoa, look at that kind of stuff, or whoa, this feels super, super old.
Well, we can get to the big moment here. We get the ultimate scene with Laurie fighting off Michael and all the shenanigans that happens there. It's one of those where I was screaming double tap the whole time doing the zombie lab reference. Like, you got to make sure he's dead, please.
He shot him 6 times.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's
all in the chest for some reason, but whatever.
She stabs him. She stabs him in the eye with a hanger.
Yes.
And he just keeps on ticking. And is this really where they kind of build the myth behind the man, that he's something more, that maybe he's supernatural?
I always wonder if that was Carpenter's intent at the time to imply that he was more than just a guy, or if he just had a high pain threshold or something, because he does get stabbed in the eye. He gets shot 6 times. He falls from, it's only a story, but he falls. I mean, he's got, it's got to have hurt something. And then I know it's the sequel but it goes right into that movie. It leads right into it, and he goes killing through a hospital right afterwards. So I don't know. Is it just, he is just a man, but these movies kind of make him more than that. I don't know if it's because the story needs him to be, or if he's just, something more.
Yeah, it's almost like a legend of evil is scarier than just a person with a knife, and I know that they referred to him as the Shape at some points, and for behind the scenes type stuff. And the fact that they talk about him like he's the boogeyman on Halloween, when like a dude walking around in a mask shouldn't be too unusual, right?
Looking like that though.
He's a little bit extra level of creepy.
Yeah, if I see a 6'4" tall, Captain Kirk walking around in a jumpsuit, I'm going to be a little bit weary.
Well, that does let me ask a question. How are you ranking Michael Myers in terms of horror antagonists?
Oh, like if we're doing a slasher showdown of all the, I actually prefer Michael Myers more than, because we have Michael Myers, Jason, Freddy, Voorhees, Pinhead, Candyman, like all these classic, from the 70s to 90s slashers. I actually probably put them pretty high. It's unfortunate. I feel like some of the sequels have kind of lowered down the quality of Michael Myers a little bit, but I think the core of it's still there. I would love to have seen, I know we got Freddy versus Jason. I would have loved to have seen, Jason versus Michael, but then like you'd have to have a lot of people talking because neither one of them says jack crap. So like you'd get no dialogue.
Right. The quietest film, just knife sounds,
just stereo, heavy breathing.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Bobby, you liking Michael?
Yeah, I think he's interesting. Probably for me, like I agree with Matt, like maybe better than Jason or some of those. I think my favorite is Freddy, just because he's so weird. And like even the sequels like did him wrong too. Like he like kind of became like a comedy guy at the end. But
wow, this common theme with sequels.
We're not talking about the sequels right now. We're talking about the original. So yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty good.
I mean, definitely as a kid, Freddy was the one that freaked me out more than any of the others, because the idea of those claws on your hand, all that, not that great. Right. Bobby, you telling everyone to watch Halloween again?
I mean, I think that the history is there for sure. Like, I think that, it's the one that for me, it kind of started this kind of genre. And I think that there's a lot there that's worth taking a look at if you're interested in the history of horror.
And Matt?
I think that, it's almost like, I'm not going to lie. Usually with a lot of these movies, I hadn't seen them in a while. This one I watch every year on Halloween. So I recommend it. I think that if you haven't seen it, watch it, ignore the sequels, ignore the remakes, just watch this one. If maybe the second one, if you're going to watch one, but I think if you watch this one, it's more than enough. And then just enjoy it for what it is. Watch it on Halloween. Yeah, I think it's got that good combo of slasher and Halloween theme going.
I think you've lined up where I landed on it as well, where a yearly re-review or yearly rewatch of this would be to your benefit. I think it is an excellent time to watch during the month of October and take in what is such a classic Halloween film that does set up all the things that we know so well. So definitely check it out. As always, thank you for listening and joining us for this special Halloween month. This is going to conclude our first season of ReReview. We'll be back in 2 weeks with season 2, brand new and refreshed for you. Please remember, it's Halloween and everyone's entitled to one good scare.